Well, after nearly 5 months of waiting, the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship is back for another season of amazing racing action. Last season saw the thrills, the spills, and everything in between. And now, once again, we have some of Raceroom's best coming back to compete for the crown of the Season 2 Championship. Of course, over £300 worth of prize money available. And as I say, we have got the absolute plethora of racing talent to talk you through. Let's take a quick look as to some of the drivers that will be fielding this season. A couple of new people, many returning ones as well. As you can see, Ezekiel Chaminando, the Argentinian, will be joining us this season. But there you can see Luciano Wittfurt. You might recognise him from some of the, top-end Raceroom esports stuff as well. Recently joining Brabham Esports is there on the grid. Pascal Jean-Pietro, the Swissman, after a good run of form last season, again returns alongside Bench Farkas as well, the Hungarian, who has also been looking pretty good in the Raceroom rank side of things. He's going to be trying out to see how he can do in another season of touring cars. The Russian of Pavel Mikkonen will be joining us, as well as Lloyd Biddulph, reigning champion for Trippsix Motorsport, with Fraser Rostars and Ian Deeney also taking to the field as well. Beyond that, we've got the Greek of Nick Papadim, Nena Vladislavljevic, the resident tank, I suppose, of this championship. He's always been very good at his defence. He's returning alongside as well Stu Neal, Victor Bernat Rubio, the Spaniard, back after a bit of a sabbatical for the majority of last season, and Marius Zabdir for the Absolute Motorsport Racing, the pole. Again, a huge recognisable name at the top end of Raceroom. Emmanuel Lopez, another Argentinian, joining the grid with Shores Oyser and Phil Lawson as well in the field. Beyond that as well, Tomasz Santino, Alan Axon, Sebastian Ray, as well as Laszlo, Simon Trebek, Benny Norton, Poddy Flack and Russ Butcher all returning for another season as well. Some hugely recognisable names, and there is our grid. A very strong one indeed, and of course for those watching along that are new to the Trippsix Motorsport YouTube channel and to the championship in of itself, make sure you are liking, subscribing and turning the bell on for notifications as well, because from now, for the next few Sundays, we are going to be broadcasting the Super Touring Championship live Sundays at 8 PM, well 10 to 8 I suppose PM for those in the UK. Talking of the calendar as well, of course we kickstart our season here at the Temple of Speed in Monza. We'll head our way to Mid-Ohio, Interlagos, the Saxon Ring, Zolder, Hockenheim for another trip to Germany, as well as Road America and the Nürburgring to round us off in a few weeks time. We've got 8 weeks of racing, a break week halfway through, and 2 races per evening for a total of 16. And just to touch on actually on the format, I've just remembered I haven't actually discussed it to those that are new. For those that were here last season, you will know 12 minutes in qualifying, 2 20-minute races alongside a reverse grid as well for a little bit of extra spice in race number 2. So 40 minutes of racing action in total, plenty on offer. I did touch on a little bit earlier on the fact that we've got over £300 in prize money. £150 goes to the winner of the championship, 100 to second, 50 to third, and then also a £20 extra prize pool for the driver that on average has the lowest number of incident points. So it does pay well to be clean, albeit maybe at Monza we might not be able to see as much of that. It's going to be tricky to keep your nose clean. It's one of those circuits that it's tricky too. It does reward aggressive racing and just promote aggressive racing in itself, I suppose, one way of saying it, because as I say, Temple of Speed, these touring cars, they're not incredibly aerodynamically inclined, especially that run into turn number 1 and 2, the Rettifilio chicane, because very tricky corners, very tight, especially on that opening lap. So you have got to be very careful. Again, you've got the Roger, you've got the Lesmos, Ascari, Parabolica, so many difficult corners to battle your way through here at Monza. It is going to be a tough one indeed, but hopefully should be fantastic racing. Again, with the slipstream and things being quite strong in these touring cars, it should lend itself quite well to sort of keeping the field nice and close. Even if you are sort of 2, 3, 4 tenths off the pace, you can sort of make that difference up, if you like, with being in the slipstream and racing best. Pace isn't always the number one sort of overall factor. You have got to have a bit of everything. Pace absolutely does help. You're not going to win a race if you're not quick, but you don't need to be the quickest. If you're the most consistent, if if you're the one that makes the best moves, if you're one that makes the smartest decisions over the course of the race, you are going to be the one that comes out on top in and not only these races, but also over the course of the season. That's something that Lloyd Biddulph was boasting quite well to during the duration of last season. He didn't really get a win. I think it was until the Red Bull Ring, where it was his first win. Then he obviously went on a string, I think, of 4 in a row over the course of the next couple of weeks of racing. So, you know, you don't necessarily need to win every race in order to compete well in the championship. What we do have, though, ladies and gentlemen, is an open qualifying, which means everyone is out on track at the same time. Here at Monza, I'm sure they've already been warned to keep it nice and clean. They have been told they're allowed to cut across turns 1 and 2 on their outlap if they wish, maybe just to clear the traffic. A couple of teammates maybe going and, you know, going away with each other to sort of slipstream amongst themselves, because, as we say, only what we've got turns 1 and 2, we've got Curva Grande, 4 and 5 of the Della Roja, then we've got Lesmo, we've got then 3 corners at Ascari, that makes it 10, so 11 corners in total, plus or minus maybe, depending if you count the kink from Lesmo to the second Lesmo to the Ascari chicane. So 11 or 12 corners, and it's not really that many in respect. A lot of it is spent flat out, therefore a lot more time can be gained from that slipstream. So it is going to be ever important to have someone to essentially be with to sort of work with, maybe doing a lap in front and then a lap behind, just to sort of work off each other. Have got, as I say, a couple of teammates in this championship. Not necessarily that there is a team's championship in of itself, more so that, you know, these drivers, say Trippsix Motorsport, for example, have got a couple of drivers that are fielded under that entry, so maybe they could be working together to bring home the best result for the team as a collective. Talking of teams, I did touch on it earlier, Luciano Wittfurt, formerly Gatter Chain Ballast esports driver, now driving for the renowned Brabham esports team here in Raceroom, who, in all fairness, haven't really seen much of them in the scene of Raceroom. Quite big in terms of iRacing and R-Factor 2, but not really too much, not when it comes to Raceroom side of things, so maybe just trying to branch out, I have to say. One driver that will help you branch out is Luciano Wittfurt. Have the pleasure of commentating on him over the course of the official Raceroom ranked championship of season 1. He did the MX-5s, he did the KTMs, and he did the GT3s. He was second place in the championship in both MX-5s and KTMs. Arguably, both of those championships were lost due to bad luck, and then he finally wrapped it up in the GT3s. So he's a very strong and competent driver. He knows how to drive pretty much anything under the sun in Raceroom ranking experience, Raceroom racing experience, I should say. It's you know what? It's been a long 5 months, guys. All right, I need to brush off the cobwebs here for the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship, and I'm sure so do a lot of these guys as well. Of course, as I say, a lot of them have been keeping themselves nice and fresh. Marius Sabdir, Bench Farkash taking a couple of pole positions in the Raceroom ranked MX-5 Cup. Luciano Wittfurt obviously winning championships and things along the way. I'm sure these guys have kept themselves fresh in terms of overall sort of racing, but maybe not in the world of touring cars, because they're a very different discipline to sort of get right. Front wheel drive, difficult to drive as well, and also not only from the physical sort of driving it standpoint, but also from the actual racing dynamic that you get with touring cars. Very difficult thing to sort of wrap your head around, because for those especially maybe used to high downforce cars, maybe the Formula Raceroom side of things, you race that and, you know, chances are you're going to be prone to, if you make contact, you're going to be prone to a spin. In the touring cars, it's not as much. There is a little bit of margin for some rubbing. So it is a very aggressive, very kill or be killed, very hunt or be hunted, sink or swim essentially, dynamic of racing that you have to sort of bed yourself into. And you're not going to get anywhere if you just sort of like, oh please, after you, and you play the patient, you know, conservative game. Yes, it does help sometimes, but all in all, you need to have an aggressive, you know, not going to take anything laying down sort of attitude to the racing. Lloyd Biddulph across the line for his first lap in the Audi RS3 is going to be looking to set his first lap time on the board. It's P3 for now, but very quickly beaten by Vladislav Levic to third, who then gets topped by a couple of drivers. Luciano Wittfurt, Bench Farkash now goes to the top of the timing sheets with a 57.501. So again, looking very, very quick, but still very close. Zabdin, Mukonin, new for this season. Wittfurt, Jean Pietro, Vladislav Levic. Cheminando bit off Axel and Sebastian Ray round off the top 10. So plenty of talent, as I touched on. Still only 2.5 seconds covering the field in the opening half of this qualifying. So yeah, as I say, still plenty. More pace than he had in the form of the Super Touring Championship. As I touched on, of course, you have to be consistent over the course of the entire championship, because we are here at Monza. We'll head across the world. I mean, we go to Germany 3 times, in fact. We go to the Saxon Ring, which I'm fairly sure is in Germany. That sounds a very German name. Hockenheim and the Nürburgring to round off the season. So a couple of tours in Germany, but fair enough. There's some decent tracks over in Germany. Can't blame them. The Nürburgring should be a very interesting one as well. One to look forward to, and should play host to a fantastic championship finale. I'm sure Rich Weatherwell maybe took some notes from the actual Raceroom rank side of things, because we have 3 championship finales at the Nürburgring, and all of them were absolutely sublime. So yeah, the Nürburgring, it plays host to some decent championship finales. Let's basically let's leave it at that. Alan Axon for Trippsix Motorsport is working his way through the Parabolica. It has been renamed to the Alberto Curve, but it's the Parabolica. The Trippsix Motorsport driver at the moment, as I say, sat 9th in the slipstream of the 2 ahead of him. Is he going to be able to improve on his time? Is he going to be able to improve on his position? It's the longer run to the timing line, not the first one, it's the second one. Alan Axon up to 3rd place in the provisional standings of qualifying, but we still have got half of the session left to go, which means that it can be a little bit more tricky to retain those positions. Of course, the longer into the session we go, the closer people are going to get to their optimum times, the better the track's going to get, the more in tune with the car the drivers are going to get, the more time they're going to be able to find. But it's only going to be in sort of till that last lap or so where we reach that ceiling, where it's going to be that much harder to improve because you're already so good. So maybe that's where the difference of an apex braking 10 meters earlier or later could be the difference between pole and second, or second and third, whatever it might well be. You have to make those small differences. So by no means, if you have put in a good lap time, don't stop. Don't feel secure in it whatsoever until that checkered flag falls. Of course, for those, again, who are new to Raceroom, not only the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship, but also Raceroom in of itself, as soon as that qualifying timer ticks 0, that's it. The session is done. So you have got to, to calculate your laps quite well, because, as I say, you don't get to finish your lap. Raceroom does not give a Scooby if you are halfway around the lap and you're purple in all sectors at the moment. Time 6-0, tough luck, mate. Sorry, nothing we can do about it. Session's got to move on. So, you've got to be careful with, when you start your final lap time, how much preparation you put on that final out lap, I suppose, and how long you leave it to actually go back out onto the circuit. Fortunately, these touring cars aren't overly hard on their tyres, so you should, in theory, be able to do multiple laps on the bounce, which is a very good thing. Because you stay in rhythm with the car, you slowly start to find improvements, and if you just do one lap at a time, and you do an out lap, you do a flying lap, you go back to the pit lane, you do an out lap and a flying lap. You're going from fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, and you're not really carrying momentum at all. And you might be thinking, well, you're driving the track the same anyway. But in fact, it's completely opposite. If you do a fast lap and you lose a little bit of time on it, say through the first Lesmo, on that next lap, you are then going to try and carry that momentum, learn from that mistake on the previous lap, and then try and find that time, because you're already the adrenaline's flown, already the prep work's done, and it's just about going as fast as possible, which Luciano Vitfer, as it stands, is not doing, which tells me this is his final prep lap before his final push lap. You can see about 1.3 seconds down as it stands on the quickest lap time still set by Ben Farkash. So Luciano Vitfer, see what he can do with one lap. Again, it is a long lap in these touring cars here at Monza. You wouldn't think it, because it is a fairly short lap in of itself, but the touring cars do take a little while because they're not overly straight line speed inclined. They're more designed for tracks like sort of like Snetterton, Alton Park, things like that. Not the Temple of Speed, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be having some good racing action. Monza, touring cars is a great recipe. Luciano Wittfurt then is about to start his final lap. In fact, he has started his final lap of the qualifying session with 2 minutes and 20 seconds left to go. Thank you to everyone that is watching along on the Trippsix Motorsport YouTube channel. I know I've said it already, but do make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you turn the bell on and everything to make sure you don't miss a single thing that comes your way in terms of this fantastic championship. And also, Trippsix Motorsport have launched their Instagram, so if you are on the world of Instagram, you can go drop them a follow, Trippsix Motorsport. You can also drop me a follow at ZachSweeney19 as well, if you do feel so inclined. That would be lovely. And yeah, actually, I haven't introduced myself either. I've introduced all the drivers, but not myself. I'm Zach Sweeney. Hello. I've been the commentator for Trippsix Motorsport since their inception for the Super Touring Championship. Actually, no, I haven't been. It was last season. That's it. That wasn't the start of the championship. In fairness, there was a couple of seasons before that. But last season, anyway, was the start of the Super Touring Championship, I suppose. That's when I come in to start doing the commentary and talking rubbish live on air. Basically, essentially talking to myself, because there's no one here with me apart from obviously our very good cameraman Max behind the scenes, who's doing a brilliant job, by the way, delivering this amazing broadcast and looking at the very beautiful overlay of the Trippsix Touring Championship. So yeah, this is us, and this is the Trippsix Super Touring Championship. So yeah, here we go. Looking forward to a new season, and can't wait for what's to come. Marius Sabdir is out there on track at the moment, currently second place and needs a 2/10 improvement to top the Hungarian, whose qualifying pace, as I touched on in the Raceroom Ranked Championship, I think he took sort of 2 pole positions over the course of a 4-round season. Unfortunately, no one is going to be able to improve before the end of the session. Bench Farkas then takes the first pole position of this season. Marius Sabzir will join him on the front row, with Alan Axon starting the season off well alongside newcomer Pavel Mukonin joining him on row 2. Reigning champion Lloyd Biddulph rounds off the top 5, with Nenad Vladisevic joining him on row 3. Pascal Jean-Pietro and Luciano Wittfurt 7th and 8th, with Ezekiel Cheminando and Shores Oysa 9th and 10th. Then comes Phil Lawson, Stu Neal row 6, with an all-Argentinian row 7. Thomas Santino and Emmanuel Lopez. Behind that, Fraser Rostance, the top 15. Sebastian Ray, with not the best of qualifyings, but still less than 1.5 seconds off pole, will start from 16th. Papadim 17th, with Simon Trebek and Lazio Sepeva, as well as Russ Butcher, Ian Deeney, Polly Flack and Victor Bernat Rubio to round off the 23-car field ahead of the first of 2 races this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we've got our first 20 minutes, followed by a reverse grid, another 20-minute race. We've got about 1:50 until we line up onto the grid. I'm going to take a step away for just a moment. We'll be back for the start of the race. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are only moments away from getting another season of the Super Touring Championship back underway. Lloyd Biddulph coming into this as the reigning champion, but Bench Farkas setting the benchmark in the opening qualifying session of the season. A 57.2, I believe he was able to set, 2 tenths quicker than the rest of the field, and pole position on that run down in towards the Rettifilo chicane here at Monza. Anyone familiar with the circuit, anyone that knows anything about motorsport will know this is going to be absolutely chaotic on that opening run. Again, these drivers hungry to start the season off well. Maybe a little bit of nerves and adrenaline spikes throughout the field. A couple of new drivers taking to the field. Some seasoned veterans yet to prove what they can do out on the circuit. It should be a lot of fun. My name is Zach Sweeney. I'll be your commentator, talking you through each and every single bit of action over the course of the next 20 minutes of racing before we head over to the reverse grid race 2 for this evening. The drivers, as it stands, are out on their formation lap. They'll be getting ready to take to the 5 red lights, and that runs the Rettifilo chicane in just a moment. And here we go. The 5 red lights are on. The drivers are taking to the grid. Bench Farkas, Marius Sabdir, the front row. 20 minutes on the clock. And the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship number 2 is underway here in Monza. A good start from the front row from both Bench Farkas and Marius Sabdir as they defend their positions going in towards turn 1 for the first time. It's a long run before you slam onto the anchors. Marius Sabdir looking to go to the left-hand side of the Hungarian into the first corner. 3 wide of the background, as well as Alan Axon, I think, might be pinched between Mukkonen and Lloyd Bidoff, who's trying to make up a couple of places in his Audi RS3. His work was 4th. Unfortunately for Alan Axon, is now 2 places to 5th, as well as being a little bit under pressure from the Swiss Pascal Jean-Pierre Nenad Vladislavic trying to find his way through as well. He's up to 6th. What could be the answer in the fight for the lead, though? Bench Farkas forced to go defensive into the Roger as Marius Sabdir continues to put a little bit of pressure on outside line as they slam onto the brakes once more. And it's Bench Farkas that's able to retain the lead for now, but under heavy fire from the pole. Once again, the Hungarian defensive is Sabdir. Has he got the agility to go the long way around? He's definitely going to give it a good go. Forced a little bit wide as Farkas pushes the limits, but they continue to go side by side until Sabdir thinks he's had enough and backs into the line. 1, 2 and 3, Farkas, Sabdir, Mukkonen starting his debut season off quite well. Now this long run towards Ascari. Bench Farkas going to be hoping that Mukkonen gets himself into the mix sooner rather than later. But is there going to be any dramas into the Ascari chicane? You wouldn't imagine so. A couple of looks in the background you can see there. That might have been Vip trying to get himself involved. But through Ascari for the first time, and thankfully no dramas to fall back on. Alan Axon, Vitford, Chimendino and John Pietro all swapping places as well. It's absolute mayhem in the background of shot. There's a couple of looks as well as we head into the Parabolica for the first time of many. 18 minutes still left on the clock, then we round off lap number 1. Marius Sabdir looking to start a charge early on this run through the Parabolica onto the pit straight. He's got a nice tight line. Has he got the speed though through the pit straight? Bench Farkas leads the first lap, but is he going to lead into the first corner of lap 2? Mukkonen giving Sabdir a little bit of a push as well, potentially trying to catapult himself into the lead and follow the gap through. Could we see a 3 wide moment? Who's going to be the one that's bravest on the brakes? There's a bit of contact there, 3 wide as the Russian and Mukkonen tries to send the move to the inside, and Bench Farkas is sent off the road over the anti-cut curbs. He rejoins the race in 2nd place, but ideally probably with a slowdown to go his way. Lloyd Bidoff back into the mix. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Sabdir, Mukkonen, Farkas and Bidoff the top 4 in this race. There's a lot of drama going into the Rettifilo chicane to start off lap number 2. Mukkonen looking to go for the lead already, but Marius Sabdir, anyone that watched last season should know that this man in the lead is a dangerous prospect. Side by side here as Luciano Vitford overtakes Alan Axon, and the up and under from Cheminado as well finds his way through and up into 7th place. Unfortunate for Axon as it's another place lost, because Pascal Jean-Pierre finds his way past Axon, who really hasn't had a good run in the early stages. Part thanks to just how chaotic the opening couple of laps are, with sort of the pack racing dynamic of things and all of that, because again it's easy for these things to happen. You get overtaken once and you know the driver behind immediately is on it. So it's all about trying to keep that rhythm, that momentum up throughout the race. And in pack racing, it's difficult because, as I say, you get overtaken once, and then the driver behind says, "Ah, oh, sweet, he's vulnerable. I'm then going to overtake you as well." Then you've lost 2 places, then 3. Before you know it, sort of you've lost 4 places before the race has even properly started. But into the Parabolica once again. It's Sabdir that leads lap number 2 with Mukkonen keeping him honest. but how much longer can Zabdir retain the lead? In the slipstream, of course, the Russian Mukkonen is trying his absolute best to put a little bit of pressure on. Lloyd Biddulph as well, the reigning champion, trying to get himself onto the podium ahead of pole sitter Bench Farkash. No changes amongst the top four, but a couple of moments in the background. Luciano Wittfurt trying to get himself ahead of Vladislav Lejic in the fight for fifth. Luciano Wittfurt later on the brakes up into fifth, Serbian forced to concede. Cheminando and John Pietro fighting over seventh and eighth as well. They emerge their way out of the chicane and through Curva Grande. Let's see. Too bad of a job, kept it nice and clean. So far, let's put it that way, so far, for now, with these guys. I'm sure in a few moments' time it will get quite aggressive. There is Lloyd Biddulph trying to get onto the back of that fight for the lead. You can see the Audi RS3 a little bit sluggish compared to the three cars in front of him. Of course, the balance of performance has been adjusted. We saw a heavy contingent of the Alfa Romeo Giulietta over season one because the bot favoured it as much. And, well, with refined balance of performance, with ballast and power sort of adjusted slightly, these drivers have now been able to make their pick, and the pick they've made for this race is the pick they're going to have for the rest of the season. So you had to have made a good choice first, but even sort of if the balance of performance sort of favours one car more than the other, still pick the car you enjoy driving the most, because we've got the Lynx & Co at top three of Zabdir, Mukkonen and Farkash. Maybe that car is quickest at Monza thanks to the balance of performance. Of course, it's a season-long thing, so Monza isn't the only circuit they're taking to. But if you don't enjoy driving it, don't drive it. Go in the Audi. I know it sounds obvious, but some drivers go in the fastest car purely because it's the fastest car, but it's not going to be the fastest car if you can't drive it to that potential. Drive in a car that you can extract that potential out of. But as it stands, no worries for the top three, as their pace is absolutely staggering. But Lloyd Biddulph and his pace in that Audi is looking fairly decent as well as we approach the halfway mark of this race. But just to maybe make more sense of that point I was making, if you get into the quote-unquote fastest car, say the Lynx & Co, but you can only extract 60% of what the car's capable of, but you can get into the Audi and extract 90%, surely it's a no-brainer to get into the Audi and be in a car you feel more comfortable in, you're going to enjoy driving in, and you're going to succeed more in. Because sometimes, yeah, they're all front-wheel drive, yeah, largely they will drive similarly. They do all have their own little tweaks and differences to the driving style that you could well need to adapt to. And if your driving style isn't catered to a certain car, you don't want to be driving that. You don't want to be stuck driving that for the whole season. And it's a decision these drivers, have to make, because it's a big decision to make. They can't change once they've sort of settled in. This one race has locked in the car choices. There's no, this car's quicker at this track, so I'll use it then, and then it's quicker at this track, so I'll use it again then, and chop and change that season. Now you can't do that. You've got to choose a car that's going to be quick and consistent all season long, and a car that you're going to be quick and consistent in all season long, because there's such a wide variety of circuits that we take to. Just to touch on them once again, we've got Monza, Mid-Ohio, Interlagos, the Sachsenring, Zolder, Hockenheim, Road America, and the Nürburgring to round off the season. Plenty of differences in all those tracks: straight line speed, corners, tight, twisty, undulation, high sausage curbs, low sausage curbs, all these different factors that will cater to different cars more than others. So just because one car is quick in Monza doesn't necessarily mean it'll be quick in a week's time when we head to Mid-Ohio. 12 minutes left to go in this race, and still a top four contingent breaking away from the rest of the pack. Luciano Wittfurt, despite being up 3 places from 8th, not really been able to make much headway on the top four. Looking to make some headway for the lead, though, is Pavel Mukkonen, looking to go to the right-hand side of Marius Zabdir, who's going to be eager to defend the lead, or is he? He's late on the brakes, but Mukkonen is later. He's got himself into the lead, and Marius Zabdir really only of the wiser. Wasn't too aggressive to defend that, so maybe confident that he can get himself back into the mix at a later date. With still over half the race to go, he's got time on his hands. The trap that he doesn't want to fall into is falling behind the two behind him of Farkash and Biddulph, because then things do start to get a little bit worrying for the pole. Already, though, on the counter-attack, later on the brakes into the Roger, though the outside line for the Russian is going to keep him in the lead. He's bold, he's brave, he's brilliant, and now Bench Farkash has got the run out of the exit of the Roger to maybe have a little bit of a look at the man who is fighting tooth and nail for the lead. The up and under for the pair of them. Are they going to emerge from the first Lesmo 3 wide? Nearly There's contact as Farkas takes the lead. He's side by side with Pavel Buchanan, who finds himself on the left-hand side. Bench Farkas, though, later on the brakes, and here comes Lloyd Biddulph through. He puts his foot to the floor and is going to hope that it's enough on that run towards Ascari. It's absolute carnage for the top four. Mariusz Zabdir has fallen to fourth, but he's immediately on the attack of Lloyd Biddulph. The inside opens up going into Ascari, and we might well see Zabdir take back to the podium, but Bench Farkas, a brilliant display of racecraft to find his way into the lead. They work their way through Ascari, and it's Farkas that leads from Buchanan, Biddulph and Zabdir, all of whom are just the pinnacle of this race at the moment. They are absolutely flying, but in doing so they have allowed that train behind Luciano Wittfurt to close the gap ever so slightly. So if that battling does continue, it's a worrisome trap for them and could well see that entire group of cars you can see in the background to join the fight. So much has happened in the first half of this race and so much more is to come. So if you aren't enjoying this, I don't know what is going to be able to satisfy you. You guys are definitely not easily pleased in the slightest. This is exactly what we're signing ourselves up for the Trippsix Super Touring Championship. Bench Farkas, Buchanan, Biddulph and Zabdir. This is the fight we're watching now. The pole, of course, in the Lynx & Co car. The Audi RS3 of Lloyd Biddulph trying to find his way past. He's looking to defend his podium place, but Mariusz Zabdir really got much of an answer to him. Reeling him in though, look at that, the gap between Mariusz Zabdir and Luciano Wittfurt, age-old rivals though too, that came to blows on so many occasions over the course of last season and have raced each other for years now, I think, at the top end of Raceroom Esports. These guys know each other like the back of their hands. They've raced each other so many times, battled just as much, and are some of the top drivers in terms of rating, speed, consistency, versatility in this championship, and also, you know, on this sim, they really are specialists. So it'll be interesting to see those two maybe engage in a bit of a battle. A little bit further down, we've got a nice little fight going on here behind the German of Sebastian Rey. Emmanuel Lopez, the Argentinian, behind him, and of course we've got Fraser Rostarch just ahead at 15th place. Sebastian Rey, of course, again, you might recognise him as a race winner for the MX5 Cup in the Raceroom Ranked Championship, which is returning, so again, get yourself involved in that, and also, maybe, if you can, get yourself involved in this. If not this season, definitely do get yourself involved for future seasons or any fun events that they like to run in the meantime, because you're always going to have a lot of fun. You'll always have something to learn as well. So yeah, it would be nice to see you out on the track. Also, make sure those of you in the YouTube section of the Trippsix Motorsport YouTube, make sure first of all that you are subscribed, you have given the stream a like, and that you are giving us your thoughts, feelings, queries, questions, whatever it is in the YouTube chat. I promise I don't bite. I can see a couple of you. I can see Zena, Fabio, Gregor. We've also got Dusan as well in the YouTube chat watching along with us, so it's great to have you, great to have your company. Yeah, do make sure you keep engaged and having some fun. I do like to have a chit chat with the YouTube chat sometimes, and well, these two are going to be having more than a chit chat in a moment's time. Mariusz Zabdir still trying to find a way past, or is he? Is he trying to help himself and Lloyd Biddulph get to the top two of Farkas and Buchanan? Because if they fight for third, that's all they're going to get. The best they can get is third. If they hold their horses for a little bit and, you know, deliver a couple of good laps with good pace, they might be able to and also, sort of, if they fight for third, they risk Wittfurt, Placevic, Cheminando, Jean-Pietre, Axel, Oyser, all getting themselves into the mix, and they might not even finish third or fourth. It could be towards the back end of the top 10. So that's a risk you're going to have to weigh up. Is it worth fighting tooth and nail for? Still with 7 minutes left to go in this race as well. That's wide from the Alfa Romeo. There's contact in the background. And that, I think, is Stu Neal having it off. There was contact with Shaw's Oyster as well. You can see the Alfa Romeo trying to fight away with the Cooper Leon of Tomasz Centino. The Argentinian finds his way up into 10th place behind Alan Axon, who is a couple of seconds up the road. That was absolutely insane. And, well, Gregor Hujek just predicted it in full swing. Absolute fireworks. I think it might have been Phil Goulston that was the Alfa Romeo sent sideways off the exit of the Roger, but oh, that was a close one indeed. And well, could have very easily ended it in drama and chaos and tears. I think it maybe might have done for some. Stu Neal, definitely one of them in his Lynx & Co car. But nonetheless, it was a sketchy moment, which I suppose can happen, as that's wide from one of the Renault Megane. Might be Simon Tribbik or Papadin for 14th, and it might be, it probably was Simon Tribbik in 18th place, running wide at the Ascari chicane. But Yeah, I suppose that is what you get going 3 wide through the Roger. Not really a corner that lends itself too well to going 3 wide. Potentially seeing themselves fight for the lead though. Pavel Mukkonen searching for his race lead back as Bench Farkas brilliantly found his way past after the up and under going through the first Lesmo. Found himself on the inside of Mariusz Sabda, and it turned in fact actually to the inside Pavel Mukkonen after all of that as well. He finds himself leading the way after getting pole position, dropping back a few places. He's now back in control. 5 minutes, 35 seconds left to go for race number 1 before we flip the grid on its head and go again for race 2. Looking, he's Pavel Mukkonen, just in behind of Bench Farkas. Just seeing that we've got Dusan saying elbows out, very much so. These guys do not like to give an inch at all. And if there is a position to be had, you can bet your bottom dollar that they are going to go for it in some form or another. We've got still 2 cars in decent contention for the lead, 2 more behind that could find themselves back into the fight if things go well and the 2 in front begin to battle. We are following along with the fight for 7th. Pascal Jean-Pietre and Nenad Vasiljevic, who again I sort of note as the season tank. His Volkswagen Golf last season was just that, so wide and did not allow anyone through. I don't think he took a win. He might have took a podium at some point over last season, but he was sort of rarely ever outside the top 5. So consistent, and again part and part due to the fact that he just made that car as wide as it needed to be to keep whoever he needed to keep behind him. So he's now going to have to use that experience, flip it on its head, and actually be the one attacking Chaminado, the Argentinian, again, as I say, who is joining us for this season. His debut, and 6th place on debut would be too bad, though Vasiljevic is going to want to make it a 7th at best on his debut, with only a handful of laps left to go. I believe it'll be 2 to go at the line, so this is the 3rd to last lap. If math serves me correctly, because they're just shy of a 2-minute lap, so it might be quite close in fact. So we'll wait and see when sort of Raceroom wants to call it. If it's close to the line, it might just call it a lap early. Here is the fight though. Mariusz Sabda trying to go the long way round a Curva Grande relative to Lloyd Biddulph, who is going to sort of just allow the car to run wide and defend, though Mariusz Sabda is going to find a space to the left-hand side. The right-hand side of your screen, has the pole got the space? No, is the answer to that. It's forced to concede, backs into line and stays 4th for now. Side by side for the race lead as well. Pavel Mukkonen looking to go to the inside of the first of the 2 Lesmos as Bench Farkas shuts the door in his face and says no, absolutely not. But the fight for the lead is once again re-sparked as Bench Farkas is under pressure through the 2nd Lesmo, and it's all about how efficiently you can climb through the rev range and get yourself towards the top speed, because it's a long run towards Ascari. You dip your way back under the old Monza Oval and then of course into the braking zone of one of the fastest corners on the circuit. No changes between the 2, but side by side in the background you can see Vasiljevic getting himself past Chaminado on the outside going into Ascari, finds his way up into 6th place. Still under a little bit of pressure though, as the fight for lead again only separated by 0.3 of a second. 2 minutes 34 to go is in the background. You can see Ezekiel and Vasiljevic, and now Pascal Jean-Pietre getting himself into the fight, into the Parabolica, and it's side by side between Vasiljevic and Chaminado. Pascal Jean-Pietre sat idle behind, looking to maybe go for an up and under if he can. Easier said than done though, of course, and well, the nose to tail exiting the Parabolica, inside line for the Argentinian, and he's got the Serbian in his pocket. He's going to get pushed as well from Pascal Jean-Pietre to give him a little bit of an edge as they fight their way through and, well, sort of freight train the Audi RS3. We're going to get sent 3 wide as well as the Swiss of Pascal looks to go to the left. Is he going to be brave enough on the brakes to get the position? I think the answer to that is no, but a little bit too late on the brakes potentially from Chaminado has potentially seen him under threat going off the exit through Curva Grande and into the Roger. I think he might be okay. Acceleration was decent enough. Bench Farkas, Pavel Mukkonen, once again, nothing separating them at all. We're going 2 rows of 2 in the fight for the podium places, side by side for the lead, but also side by side for the podium. Mariusz Sabda finding his way past Lloyd Biddulph. The positions are chopping and changing. It's Biddulph that retains 3rd place for now. But again, the penultimate lap of this race, not long to go at all in race number 1 of round 1 of the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship here at the Temple of Speed of Monza. Once again, another massive thank you to those tuning in. You can see a couple of you mingling in the YouTube comment section. Let me know what your thoughts and feelings are throughout this race, because mine definitely are pure joy and delight, because what a race this is turning itself into. Only a tenth of a second between our leaders. Couldn't really ask for much more. 47 seconds on the clock. Is it going to be... surely it's going to be one more. There's no way that Raceroom is going to call this a lap early. Bench Farkash is going to be hoping, of course, that it does. Pavel Mukkonen is going to be hoping for another lap. He's going to be ducking, diving, searching for the gap into the parabolic, late on the brakes for the move for the lead, and the up and under from Bench Farkash, though he's swooped perfectly back underneath the Russian, and the Hungarian retakes the lead. Pavel Mukkonen maybe a little bit too quickly, and not with a rational header. Late send into the parabolic has cost him his momentum, and Bench Farkash has retained the lead. One more lap to go here in Monza. We're getting told that Dusan thinks Pavel has got this on the last lap going into the Della Roja. Well, that's in a moment's time. Side by side as well in the background as Chaminando and John Pietro go side by side for 6th place. We focus our attention on the fight for the lead though, because Pavel Mukkonen, if he is going to get it done into the Roja, is going to need a perfect launch off the apex of that second part of the chicane. I don't quite think he's close enough, and Bench Farkash just has to do everything in his power to hang on for the rest of this lap. Lloyd Bidoff, Marius Sabdir fighting for the podium as well. How is that one going to get settled? Just in behind this lead fight. Luciano Vitvit closing, but not enough, I don't think, to see him in contention. Maybe over the course of race 2. The time and tick 0. The checker flag will be waved in about 2/3 of a lap's time. No moves into the Roja, no moves into the Lesmo. Time is ticking and opportunities are wearing thin for Pavel Mukkonen. We've also got Marius Sabdir and Lloyd Bidoff as well. They're going to be ones to look out for going through the final sort of long section of flat-out runs. Obviously this one to Ascari, then the one to Parabolica. I don't think Mukkonen's close enough. I really don't think he's close enough unless he gets a stellar launch. Defensive goes Lloyd Bidoff as well. Luciano Vitvit, I think, just going to run out of laps in his pursuit for the podium through the Ascari chicane for the final time. And unless Pavel Mukkonen has got a late send tucked up in there somewhere, it's going to be tough. Weaving around, breaking the slipstream as much as he can. That's wide in the background. I think that might well be Chaminando fighting alongside Pascal Jean-Pietro and Dana Vladislav. But Bench Farkash from pole position. It's been a tough race, a four-way fight for the lead at times, and race number 1 of a new season has dawned upon us. Bench Farkash, the Hungarian, from pole to flag, is victorious at the Temple of Speed. Race 1 of the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship goes the way of Bench Farkash. Pavel Mukkonen on his debut taking a podium. Reigning champion Lloyd Bidoff continuing a good run of success in 3rd. Marius Sabdir and Luciano Vitvit, the top 5. A close fight to the end for 6th though, as Pascal Jean-Pietro and Nena Vladislav were both very close on that run. And now also Sebastian Ray and Stu Neal, 13th and 14th, as they run their way across the line as well. 12 laps of intense racing action. We get to do it all over again in a few moments' time for race number 2. We'll bring you up the results in just a moment when everyone's crossed the line. And here they are. Bench Farkash, Pavel Mukkonen, Lloyd Bidoff, Marius Sabdir and Luciano Vitvit at the podium. And the top 5 with Bench Farkash as well, taking the fastest lap of the race. Pascal Jean-Pietro and Nena Vladislav in behind that, with debutant of Ezekiel Chaminando, Alan Axon and Shaw's Oyster, top 10. Then comes Phil Lawson and Papadim, Sebastian Ray, Stu Neal and Lopez, the top 15. Fraser Rostance, Russ Butcher, Simon Trebek, Shavar and Ian Deeney, the top 20. Behind that though, the DNFs, Victor Bernat Rubio, unfortunately unable to kickstart his return in good fashion. Paddy Flack in 22nd, and then unfortunately Thomas Santino 23rd and last for the virtual drivers by TX3 outfit. We are again just going to swap over into the next race session. Just a moment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are moments away from starting race number 2 of the first round of the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship. Race number 1 saw a four-way fight between Bench Farkash with the debutant of the Russian as well, with Luciano Vitve and, of course, Lloyd Bidoff and Marius Sabtis. So 5 cars, in fact, actually all in that fight. For the lead of the race. Pavel Mukonin was able to finish in second, of course, the debutant Russian. Not entirely used to everyone just yet. Going to take him a couple of rounds or so to really bed in. But Pavel Mukonin, of course, a great debut with the second place, really taking it to some of the seasoned veterans. So, yeah, 5 cars all in contention. Now we get to do it all over again, but with a slight twist with the reverse grid nature, forcing those at the front end of race 1 to now do it all over again and, well, fight their way forwards in race number 2. We saw how easy it was for some over the course of the first race with overtaking here at Monza. We'll see how truly easy it is when they've got plenty of cars. They're lining themselves up onto the grid. It's Jules Oyster and Alan Axon that take to the front row. Race number 2, 20 minutes back on the clock here for the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship. Who is going to be the one to take victory? We're going to find out as we get underway. A good launch from the start from the Dutchman of Jules Oyster, but immediately on the attack is Alan Axon as he finds his way alongside on that run in towards turn number 1. It's a very, very heavy braking zone. You've got to be incredibly careful, but it's Alan Axon that's just about able to get himself ahead. He's chopping the lead with Jules Oyster, who goes the long way round side by side as well in the background as Germanando and Vladislavic fight over the final podium place. Coming to blows as well in 7th. Lloyd Bidoff, Pavel Mukonin and Bench Farkash battling away towards the back end of the top 10. Phil Lawson just outside the top 10 as well in the 11th, fighting his way potentially with the race 1 winner, but Jules Oyster potentially under a little bit of pressure. The top 3, 1, 2 and 3, of course, nose to tail with Jules Oyster, Alan Axon, Germanando fighting their way into the Delarone. Vladislavic and Pascal Jean-Pietre just there in 5th. Dust being kicked up towards the back end of the field. I think Ian Deeney has had an offer alongside Victor Bernat Rubio. But Jules Oyster taking an early lead in this race, trying to seize control as soon as he can. But it's going to be easier said than done, especially with the Lynx & Co car. The likes of Alan Axon and Germanando maybe being the strongest outfit here at the Temple of Speed, side by side for the lead as he's already trying and gone for the counter-attack. This car's being spun and flipped in the background. I cannot believe my eyes. I think Santino, Lopez, Black Butcher have all had a big off as the fight for the lead continues as well. It's continuing to go side by side. I think in the fight for second, Germanando and Alan Axon. Vladislavic trying to get himself into the mix. There's a long run towards the Parabolica, and it's Jules Oyster that's able to seize control, but not entirely sure as to what's happened towards the back end of the field. We just about managed to catch it in the background of shot, but that is absolutely insane as you saw Marius Sabtir find his way past Pascal Jean-Pietre, up 2 places now into 5th. A great start from the pole, is looking to potentially get himself into race winning contention, but you can see the lead train spanning all the way back really to Pavel Mukonin in 12th. Phil Lawson and Bench Farkash trading places for P9, but also a move potentially for the lead as Germanando trying to go for maybe a debut round win on the outside of turn 1, late on the brakes as well from the Audi RS3 as Vladislavic tries to move his way onto the podium. Jules Oyster versus the Argentinian has come to blows as Germanando is off the road and tumbling down the order. Same too with Vladislavic. They've all had issues in the opening moments. It's not the race start that these guys would have wanted by any stretch of the imagination. We're getting told that Butcher and Lopez have exchanged some damage in that opening lap. They've not really been able to get away too cleanly. Bench Farkash we're seeing right here in 7th place, just ahead Phil Lawson and Sebastian Ray, who himself in that very lovely Audi RS3 livery finds his way to the outside of Lawson and up into 8th place. So Sebastian Ray, a slow start initially, but now finding himself up 5 places into 8th. Still 17 minutes of racing action to come. Pascal Jean-Pietre inside the top 5 as well. Finds himself Luciano Vitve, who himself is trying to spark a move for the podium. Zabdir, through all of that carnage, finds his way in second and knocking on the door for a lead as well. Luciano Vitve into the podium places and would like to get a move on and start charging after the leaders, but I don't know if everyone's really on the same page. You can see that Lloyd Bidoff trying to be late on the brakes and sending the move on the inside of Pascal Jean-Pietre. It's not going to quite work for him as Bench Farkash is the one that moves his way past Axon, who after a fantastic start, again similar to race 1, not been able to continue that and have that continuity for the rest of the race. He's fallen down to 7th as it stands. Wittfurt and Biddulph and Jean-Pietro fighting over 3rd place still. Being able to make much of an advance. That's wide though from Shaw's Oyster, and just says, here you go mate, to Marius Zabdir, that allows him through, unless that was intentional from Shaw's Oyster, because now the knock-on effect of that is he's still got a good run, and he could well have a look for a counter-attack straight away going into turn number 1 and 2. Luciano Wittfurt and Pascal Jean-Pietro as well, fighting away for 3rd place as they all duck and dive, searching for some slipstream. It's not going to be another move for the lead, but there's going to be a move for 3rd. Luciano Wittfurt trying to be late on the brakes. Pascal Jean-Pietro trying to be agile on the outside. He's forced wide, forced to concede, but he's not going to back out. No, sir. Pascal Jean-Pietro finds his way through. Luciano Wittfurt is then demoted to 4th place, not quite late enough on the brakes, and unfortunately has to settle for 4th now. Lloyd Biddulph trying to stay ahead of Benj Farkas in his fight. Also, this is just how chaotic it is. There's cars absolutely everywhere. Benj Farkas able to be late enough on the brakes, but there you can see Pavel Mukonen and Sebastian Ray exchanging 8th places. Pavel Mukonen has finally been able to have a decent run over the last couple of laps or so after a poor start, dropping him down to 12th place. A really good debut, it must be said. Really impressed with his pace, and I do apologise for almost forgetting his name earlier on. Thankfully, I'm spoiled here at Trippsix. They've given me an info sheet with all the drivers' names and their teams and their cars and their little achievements as well. So we can list off some of them as the season goes on, which, as I say, there's plenty of achievements to sort of indulge into because of just the calibre of drivers that we've got on this field. The likes of Zabdir, Wittfurt, Biddulph, Farkas, just to name a few, towards the top end of Raceroom Esports. Marius Zabdir still breaking away with Shaw's Oyster in that fight for the lead, but still hotly contested in this fight for 3rd. Luciano Wittfurt under pressure from Lloyd Biddulph as they're flying in 2 rows of 2. Benj Farkas and Pascal Jean-Pietro as well fighting just in behind for 5th. No changes amongst the 4 of them. Why was them? Surely though you'd want to be making some advancements for sort of the leaders, but no one really has gone for that. They're all just choosing to sort of cut off their ceiling at 3rd. Luciano Wittfurt very aggressive to the inside. Biddulph follows him just in the hope that there is going to be a little bit of space. He goes to the outside, but there goes Benj Farkas late on the brakes trying to turn offense into the move for 3rd place, I should say. Oh no, 4th will be. He was trying to be defensive on Farkas and in braking as late as he could, sort of manufacturing this move for Wittfurt, but it wasn't enough. And Biddulph is now trying to spark his own move on Wittfurt. He's on the outside of the Roger. Brave enough on the brakes though this time by Wittfurt though gone in deep, and look at that up and under from both cars in behind. They're looking for a stellar run. Lloyd Biddulph now looking to go to the outside. The super nature of the 2 Lesmos could well allow him to do so, unless he's just going to tuck in and maybe get back underneath. You can see Luciano Wittfurt really under some pressure. That's Farkas just trying to find any way that he can through, but Luciano parking it perfectly through these corners. Shaw's Oyster being dropped by Marius Zabdir, who is home free potentially for his first win of the season. Lloyd Biddulph to the right hand side of Luciano Wittfurt going into the Ascari chicane. He's going to have to be brave on the brakes. It's going to have to be very bold, brave and brilliant, and he's going to do exactly that. Could Luciano Wittfurt lose 2 places in 1 as there goes Benj Farkas side by side with the seasoned veteran of touring cars. Luciano Wittfurt stays ahead. A great respect between the 2. Dust being kicked up as they emerge from the smog, and now Pascal Jean-Pietro has got himself into the mix. Pavel Mukonen as well has got himself ahead of Benj Farkas, who's really lost a ton of momentum. It's a fight all the way towards the Parabolica as Pascal Jean-Pietro has the title line going through and might pick his way past Luciano Wittfurt. They're going to emerge side by side. That title run working for the Swissman, but the outside line keeping the minimum speed up for Luciano Wittfurt, who's going to be the one that gets in the slipstream of Lloyd Biddulph first and is able to stay ahead. But now we've got 4 cars nose to tail into the second half of the race. And oh my goodness me, so much more unpredictability to come. Pascal Jean-Pietro forced all the way to the inner extremities of the circuit, but he's not quite late enough on the brakes to go for the move on Luciano Wittfurt. So instead, it's going to be Mukonen that goes a long way round, as well as Benj Farkas mounting the sausage curve to find a way past the Swissman, who's down nearly 3 places in the span of just 2 corners. We're going to show how unpredictable pack racing can be at times. You can be on the highest of highs and very quickly become the lowest of lows. not careful. Do the Roger. Still 11 minutes and 11 seconds left of race number 2. Again, a quick reminder that you are joining us here on the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship, and you're joining us here on the Trippsix Motorsport YouTube channel, so make sure you have subscribed, turn the bell on for notifications as well, to not miss a single thing that comes your way over the course of the season. We start here in Monza, we travel away around the globe to Mid-Ohio, Interlagos, the Sachsenring, Zolder, Hockenheim, Road America and the Nürburgring over the next 8 weeks, with a break week in between. Plenty of action. We're one race in, we're halfway through the second, so 14 more to come after tonight. Hopefully a lot more drama like we've seen here as well. As we say, the highest caliber of touring car talent really in Raceroom. Plenty of these drivers did compete in the official Raceroom WTCR Esports Championship. You might recognise a lot of these names from the Raceroom ranked esports side of things as well, competing towards the high end of pretty much anything under the sun Raceroom, racing experience related, and then of course a couple of other guys who are very willing to prove their worth against some of the best. Here is Lloyd Biddulph going for second place in a run of podiums for the reigning champion, who's kick-starting his Season 2 campaign really, really well. Jules Oyser is forced to go defensive. You can see the Audi RS3 of Lloyd Biddulph on the outside. He's brave on the brakes, and he's actually got himself ahead before the turning in point, which allows him to take the apex and also to take second place ahead of the Flying Dutchman, who might well be under pressure from his countryman of Luciano Wittfurt in the not too distant future. As you can also see just behind on the back of Pavel Mukonin, the only debutant still inside the top 5 in this race. We've seen the likes of Germanando up there and fighting, but unfortunately after a top 10 finish in race 1, not being able to convert that into much in race, in race 1 I should say, and then not being able to convert that into a top 10 finish in race 2 either. But to come amongst the lead fight with 9 minutes left to go. We're about 5.5 laps left to go in this race as well. We've got 12 over the course of race 1. Maybe to launch that counter-attack for second. Marius Sabzir home free really for quite an easy race win for touring car standards. 2.5 seconds clear of the field, just doing everything he needs to and allowing people to basically do the hard work for him. He's just driving at his own pace, but these guys slowing themselves down so much has allowed him to build such a big gap that I'm sure is going to continue to grow as the laps tick on by. Quite aggressive here as Ben Farkas is searching for a gap as well on the two in front of him as Wittfurt and Mukonin go side by side. Mukonin potentially sending himself a little bit too wide. Going for the parabolic, but Farkas was really able to be in a position to capitalise on it, and in fact actually might be under pressure himself as Pascal Jean-Pietre is moving himself into the fight behind the Hungarian, the Swiss driver, to the right hand side. Is it brave enough on the brakes, though? We'll reach that in about 100 meters time when they slam onto the anchors, not quite close enough on this occasion. I say on this occasion because there's a couple more to come, and well, just because he wasn't late enough then doesn't mean he won't be late enough the next time or the time after that. So don't count these guys out. We've got 6 cars separated by only a second and a half, all in a fight for second place in this race. Also some close fights throughout the field as well outside the top 10. You can see on the timing tower we've got Papadim and Sebastian Ray fighting away for 10th place, queuing up behind the debutant Papadim, who finds himself back inside the top 10. And Sebastian Ray is under a little bit of pressure from Alan Axon. There was close to contact between the two of them, but the German is able to stay in front. A couple of swaps as well back at the front with Luciano Wittfurt and Jules Oyser fighting over third, but side by side into the first of the two Lesmos. We've got our attention back to the front. Lloyd Biddulph able to stretch his legs a little bit, build a bit of an advantage clear of the Flying Dutchman, Luciano Wittfurt, and of Jules Oyser, the Quali racing car. Is he going to be able to be close enough to go for a move into Ascari? He's definitely going to think about it, maybe not because he wants to, but because he's forced to. As I said in qualifying, it's hunt or be hunted, kill or be killed when it comes to racing like this. Overtake or be overtaking fundamentally. Because that's just the nature. It's so intense, so fast-paced that if you aren't making moves forward, chances are you're being you're having moves be made on you and you're falling backwards. So you've got to be constantly driving yourself forward, no time to relax. Even in the commentary booth, I mean, I'm out of breath already, and it's only the start of the season. I've got to retrain my vocal cords to get the endurance needed for the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship, let alone what these guys are feeling after so long away. Nearly 5 months of waiting between the end of last season and the beginning of this one. Pavel Mukkonen side by side with Bench Farkas for 5th place. Ashur Oysa is just trying his best to hang on to those behind him, as there is side by side Mukkonen on the outside, Bench Farkas on the inside. The Russian is forced out to the outside of turn 1, but it's the inside for 2, and there's a bit of argy-bargy on the exit, but all is kept clean. And now the inside line, as Bench Farkas is just able to etch his nose ahead thanks in part to the slipstream given from the Alfa Romeo just ahead of him. What is the Russian going to be able to do later on the brakes from Mukkonen? Potentially could see him ahead, but he's forced to tuck into line and hope that this Swiss of Jean-Pietro doesn't himself find a way past. Into the braking zone, no changes. Oh, his dust gets kicked up there on the exit of the Russian, maybe a bit of a mistake from Bench Farkas. Sees Pavel Mukkonen find his way back through and have another mistake. The momentum is off, and Bench Farkas has lost 2 places, now down to 7th as he's trying to hang it on the outside of the Swiss, and he's been able to do exactly that, all in the same car, so not really any excuses that they can exchange. Jean-Pietro and Farkas now in a drag race towards Ascari, hoping that the slipstream is enough, but it's Farkas that takes 6th place back after nearly losing it down to 7th. So intense throughout the duration of this race, and we've still got 2 laps to go. 3 laps in fact actually after this one, because of course you get 12, so we'll go on to lap 9. We'll do lap 9, we'll do 10, 11, and then get ourselves onto 12, I think. So we did 11 completed laps in race 1. 2-minute lap time here in Monza. He's going to be hoping for all the laps in pursuit for 2nd. Can he do it though, is the question. He's going to be close in the slipstream. Has he got the space to the inside, or is he going to try and work with Bidov to close the gap to Marius Sabdir? I think that might be the idea between the two of them. Shulz Oysa under pressure from the Russian. Pavel Mukkonen, who finds himself to the outside going through turn number 1. It's the Alfa Romeo that's forced him wide. Very aggressive on the apex from Shulz Oysa, forcing Mukkonen to concede. And now Bench Farkas with a better run behind could nick that 5th place back from the Russian driver. Close again. Is Bidov and Vitford going to go for a move? I don't quite think they can close enough. Also side by side in the back now is Mukkonen. Close with Oysa, is it? Off you go, mate. I think it might be Mukkonen cutting his way across the Roger. Indeed it was. He's going to get a hefty slowdown, lose 1, 2, 3. See you, mate. Places, and not even that he can just settle back into the slipstream, because look at how much time he's lost by going off the road there. That might be his top 5 run out of the window, unless these 3 battle tooth and nail for these positions. It's going to be tough for him to find his way back through. Farkas immediately on the attack as they rise up the slight incline towards the Ascari chicane. It's the outside line, but that Lincoln Koka has been very agile, and look at how much later he was on the brakes. The long way round for Farkas, our race 1 winner. Shulz Oysa trying to keep him honest though, becomes the inside for the final part of the Ascari chicane, and he's able to hang on in brilliant fashion. Pascal Jean-Pietro as well, trying to find a way into the mix. He's getting front row seats to this brilliant battle all the way to the white line, though the Alfa Romeo not taking any chances whatsoever, but Bench Farkas and Pascal Jean-Pietro follow each other to the outside of the circuit. It's the outside for the Parabolica, and you can carry that momentum through and keep your foot in and hope it's enough, but the shorter run for the Dutchman sees him retain 4th place, but for how much longer? Farkas once again settles back into the slipstream. A very early run outside of the toe though. What is Jean-Pietro's stance in this going to be? Is he going to make it 3 wide? Is he going to commit to one of the lines and follow one of the drivers through? I think he's going to use Farkas as a bit of a pry-bar to open this gap up and follow him through. He's going to be side by side with the Alfa Romeo, but unfortunately for Shulz Oysa, it's down to 6th for him. 1 minute and 44 seconds left on the clock. The penultimate lap of the race is this one then. Not too much longer to go. 2 laps, 1 at the line, and Marius Sabdir, the gap back to Lloyd Bidov and Luciano Vitford for only 2 seconds. Could we see that gap close? Could we see a different race winner? Sabdir, Bidov, Vitford, you know, notorious for fighting for podiums and wins over the course of the first season, and now back at it again for season 2. Oh my goodness me. Couldn't really have asked for a much better championship opener. Been spoiled really for choice throughout the field. New drivers, returning veterans, and battles up and down here at one of the best venues to kickstart the season, no matter what discipline it is. Monza is one of those circuits. The fast speeds and the heavy braking zones and the chicanes and the zero margin for error nature is one that truly punishes the drivers and is one that does definitely make it a difficult betting in process, especially in a championship as hotly contested as this one. 30 seconds on the clock. We're about to start the final lap of the evening. Searches for a gap on Ben's Farkash. No way through. And one more lap to go. And still could well be an opportunity for him now. Through the pit straight for the final time. There could be Luciano Vitfort as well, giving up on that charge for the lead, maybe trying to go for a charge for second. Bidoff goes the long way round, but the double up and under potentially from Luciano Vitfort could see him get that run towards the Roger. You can see the Lynx & Co car has got a much better run, with newly crowned Brabham Esports driver of Luciano Vitfort taking that step away from Palace Esports into Brabham, is now really trying to succeed on debut. He's doing exactly that with the reigning champion, battling away. It's a late dive to the inside from the Dutchman. He's got to be brave on the brakes on the final lap. The Audi RS3 goes the long way round, and it's Bidoff and Vitfort that come to blows. Bit of contact between the two of them, but they continue on. An absolutely insane battle with just half of a lap left to go. Marius Sabdir has now basically been given this win. Well, I say given, he's not been given it, but he's been given a much better chance at taking it with his sheer pace and consistency helped by these two battling. It's a mistake from Vitfort as well after the exit of the second Lesmo to hand second place pretty much to Lloyd Bidoff. But there is the man, Marius Sabdir, after just falling off the podium, I think, in race 1, is going to come back to take the victory in race 2. He's got one more corner, the famous Parabolica, to go, and then it's going to be a first round victory for Sabdir in what could well be a start of a championship redemption for himself. A late spin in Bathurst cost him the championship arguably last season, and he's not going to want to fall victim to a similar mistake again. The pole for Absolute Motorsport Racing Team, a notorious name in Raceroom ranked esports, is going to come across the line to be victorious in the reverse grid race here for the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship number 2. The season opener at Monza, race number 2, goes the way of Marius Sabdir, with Lloyd Bidoff and Luciano Vitfort in second and third to round off what is a very high caliber podium. Ben Farkash and Pascal Jean-Pietre keeping it consistent inside the top 5, with Shores Oyster, Lukonen, Sebastian Ray, Phil Lawson and Stu Neal the top 10 after 20 hard minutes of racing. There you can see the final finishing order. Marius Sabdir takes the win, but it's Lloyd Bidoff in second that takes the fastest lap. Luciano Vitfort rounds off the podium in third, with Ben Farkash and Jean-Pietre at the top 5. Shores Oyster and Pavel Lukonen, 2 top 10 finishes for the Russian on debut. Definitely not a bad shout at all. Sebastian Ray, Phil Lawson and Papadim the top 10. Chamanando, Vlasovljevic just in behind. Quebec Rostance and Axe on the top 15, with Spavar and Victor Bernat Rubio in behind. Then comes Stu Neal after sustaining damage in the opening stages. Rizbucha, Polly Flack, Lopez, Ian Deeney, and then the lonely Thomas Santino in 23rd and final place. 2 DNFs for the Argentinian over the course of this evening. Would definitely have liked to have a much better unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring an end to coverage. Round number 1 here at Monza. It's been chaotic. We didn't really have much time to breathe or even have a quick chat about the season that's to come. But I can promise you it's going to be a good one. You saw a teaser there of just how well these drivers can race and how good these drivers are at doing it, how quick they are, how good the racecraft is, and just as I've already touched on, the caliber that we have, it's just such a high standard. It was harsh, it was fair, and fundamentally it was just pure passion racing out there. 23 drivers fighting for a victory, and with two very deserved winners to kickstart this season. Benj Farkas and Mariusz Zabdir, the two winners of this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, in a week's time we head our way across the Atlantic to mid-Ohio before Interlagos and Sachsenring to round off the first half of the season. A break week before we head to Belgium, then to Hockenheim, Road America and the Nürburgring for our 8-week, 16-race calendar. And I hope you're going to be joining us for the ride. Make sure you are subscribed to the Trippsix Motorsport YouTube channel to be back here in a week's time, Sunday, 10 to 8 p.m. for those in the UK. Translate that to whatever time zone you are in around the world, because you are not going to want to miss this whatsoever. And also to be updated with anything that is sort of Trippsix Motorsport related, make sure to follow them on Instagram. And also, if you want to, if you feel inclined, my name has been Zach Sweeney. I've also got Instagram, Zach Sweeney 19, if you'd like to go and give me a follow as well. It's been a pleasure to talk you through all of the racing action here tonight, and I look forward to delivering the action throughout the rest of the season. Well, the waffling has to come to an end at some point, guys. We have to say goodbye at some point, but we'll be back in a week's time for round number 2 at the Trippsix Motorsport Super Touring Championship. Heads to Mid-Ohio